over here, and welcome to another video, live stream. Today, I've decided to talk about the Ballomatic situation, and I've been thinking about this long and hard on what I want to talk about and how I wanted to go about talking about it. But, so here's what I decided to do. I decided to kind of wait it out a little bit to see what was going to happen on both sides of the coin, because I knew that this was going to be a serious conversation. And so this is involving a person that I've known on a mutual level at this point. Um, so people can say, well, if you're mutuals, why are you talking about the situation? I'm going to easily answer that question right now by saying, long story short, you can be friends or mutuals or even be a supporter of a person and still call them out on their bullshit if you know that even a small fraction of what they did was messed up. And so that's what's essentially happening here. Because I'm not happy with Ballomatic's actions of what he's been doing ever since the situation started, and I'm not too happy with the other side of the coin and a couple of things that have happened on their side. And I'm going to talk about that too. Long story short, I feel like there are some people that could look at this video and think, okay, well, he's being a middleman. But in my book, I'm actually looking at it in the most subjective way possible. Because in my book, people on both sides messed up, no matter who messed up more. We're going to talk about Ballomatic first. For those who don't know, there was a video that was made by a YouTuber. I can't remember his name at the top of my head. But he made a short clip of Ballomatic talking about his stance on the LGBTQ+ community. Now, it should be duly noted that Ballomatic is a religious person. He is, as his bio on Discord puts it, a born-again Christian. So, here's what Ballomatic said, and I'm going to tell you exactly what he could have said to keep himself from that situation. It wasn't Nicholas Fernaro, but I'm going to get to him. No, I mean like the literal short clip. I watched Nicholas's video, yeah, and I even commented on it, but it was somebody else. So someone took about a 2 or 3 minute clip of Ballomatic's stream and talked about that. Just put it right there as a short video. And then after that clip, he did a text box at the end, and yeah. But we're gonna get to Nicholas Fernaro's video, later. Actually, let me get my glasses on. Hold on. Hold on a second. Yeah, let me clean my glasses with that. Yeah, but basically what Ballomatic said was that he didn't support the community because of his religious beliefs, but he also added a very interesting line. He added some very interesting comments where he called the community broken and that they needed help. And you want to know what Ballomatic could have said in that situation? Like, it probably would still cause a little bit of controversy, but it would have been nowhere near as bad as what he ultimately said, word for word. But let's put it to you this way. What could Ballomatic have said to make it to where that situation, still as controversial as it would have been, not as bad as it is? To put it simply, somebody could be saying, do you support the LGBTQ+ community? Ballomatic could simply say, no, I do not. Why is that? because of my personal religious beliefs. That's all he literally had to say, if I'm being honest. He didn't have to add the whole that they're broken and they need help bullshit. He, no, no, he didn't have to. Because if he would have just left it at that instead of adding the broken and they need help comment, we probably would not even be here talking about it. Hell, not very many people would be talking about it. But because he added a few extra words to his statement, that's where the problem lies. It's not about his religious beliefs. 'Cause as far as I'm concerned, you could be a religious person, practice what you preach, and I will respect it, even if I don't personally agree with the situation, with what you said. I do, um, you see, I do respect other people's religious beliefs, just as long as I don't feel, just as long as they don't force it upon me. And trust me, gonna be, there are examples of how somebody can force their religious beliefs upon me. Like, I wouldn't like to me if somebody were to gift me a Bible, which someone actually has. I wouldn't really call that as somebody forcing their religious beliefs upon me because, as far as I'm concerned, I like reading books. To me, the Bible, in my personal viewpoint, is a book. Some people use that book to practice what they're preaching, but otherwise, I just see it as a book. Now, let's see here. I do want to say that I'm aware of both sides of the situation. I'm just broken on the Ballomatic situation. That's why I haven't been so well the past couple weeks. Yeah, I get it, Garrett. I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I've known Ballomatic. I've interacted with him a few times before this situation happened, but not as often as the two people that I believe are really on the back burner of the situation, Purple Phoenix and especially Grande. Out of the three of them, Grande is the one I knew most. Um, Now, I did initially wanted to do a thing where because Ballomatic intentionally um, misgendered somebody, instead of saying their preferred pronouns of she, her, he kept saying he, him to this person. I almost wanted, like, I was this close to actually thinking of doing it to him. Where instead of calling Ballomatic he, him, I called Ballomatic she, her. The only reason what kind of stopped me is I'd be stooping to his level if I did that. And I'm not one to stoop to disrespectful levels in any way, shape, or form. And the crazy part is there are people that practice the same religion that Ballomatic uh, practices that doesn't go against that community. And going back to Nicholas Finaro for a second here, and discover what could have been done to prevent this situation. Yeah, I get it, Garrett. I get it. But I feel like because I know Ballomatic, even as mutuals, I still felt like I should come out and talk about it for a little bit, even if this would cause me to be kicked out of his community, Purple Phoenix's community. I can't say Grande's community because Grande has since left YouTube, and we're gonna talk about that later. Excuse me. But here's the problem with Ballomatic. Okay, the problem is, ever since the initial talking points about the situation have gone down, about a week after it was discussed, um, Ballomatic has tried to paint himself as the victim in this situation. There's just one thing that he's done ever since then that doesn't make sense as to if he was the victim, why would he do this? And if he's watching this, even post live, post like even when it's as a VOD, I still want him to answer this question. If Ballomatic is as innocent as he claims to be, why exactly would he announce on his community post that he was deleting his old Discord and he was going to make a new Discord at some point down the line, and even turn off the comments on that post? I can make an assumption. He can say what he wants to say, but I can make the assumption that, in my honest opinion, it's because he knows what's going to happen. If he were to turn the comments on that video, on that post, and it was some days after people, after that situation came out, what do you think was going to what do you think would happen? In my book, people would be going into his comment section to criticize him, to bash the man, and he didn't want that. But that's just my guess. I'm going to assume he would say something. Well, I didn't want to be harassed by people, blah blah blah, and something like that. I could expect him to say something like that in response to the question. Sorry. Yeah, with Ballomatic, you know, the, in with what he's saying, it kind of hurts because I've known the man a little bit. I did think he was a good person, but then that shit happens, and then next thing I know, I'm thinking, well, is he as good a person as I thought? It seems like he's not as good a person as I thought he was. That's the thing here. When you when you know a person even as a mutual, and you hear what he said about a group of people that you personally support, I've said it before and I'll say it again. My first time ever meeting a member of that community, of the LGBTQ plus community, um, I met I met that person in the second half of my high school years. And the crazy thing about this person? They were actually one of the most respectful people I have ever met. And ever since then, I've met other people in the community. I've met my fair share of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders, and the list goes on and on. And I even have books regarding that community. The one book that there have been two books that I've read thus. Well, actually, technically four. I've read the first two volumes of Heartstopper. I've read Suicide Notes, and I read what is probably my favorite book out of the four of them thus far, Loveless. And the reason why I like Loveless so much is because it basically tells you that how some people like to think that being part of this community is a choice. That book delves into the mindset of a character that is going through why she's not exactly having a crush on somebody, why she's not falling in love with anybody, and like just has no romantic feelings toward anybody. She spends that whole book trying to figure that out about herself, which goes to show this isn't a choice; it's how they feel. I want everybody watching this video, even in the VOD, I would like for everybody to go to Amazon or wherever you find it, or wherever books are sold, and go get and buy this book called Loveless by Alice Oseman. Trust me, you will enjoy it. I really think you would, because I sure did. And the thing with Ballomatic's religion, I'm going to talk about the Christian religion for a second here because I'm going to be dead honest with everybody here. In my book, the Holy Bible, and I know it's going to hurt some people, But in my book, the Holy Bible has slowly but surely become a book of hate. Because because from what I've seen, people use passages of the Bible to, uh, in many ways, um, go along with what they believe, even if it doesn't make any actual sense, and it actually is nowhere near the actual meaning of what the Bible says. I mean, think about it for a second. I mean, think about this for a second here. Like, we have people that are supportive of the LGBTQ plus community that are Christians, and we have people that don't. And so they're using the Bible in a way that is very much different on both sides of the coin. Really is. But the reason why I go there is because with Christians, they, a number of them, I say a number of them for a reason, but a number of them don't believe in the LGBTQ plus community. They're vehemently against it. And there are a number of Christians, if not the same number of Christians, that go against something like abortion. But yet, when you read the Bible, you realize, but if you were to read the original Bible, the older the Bible gets, the more the things that are being talked about regarding the Bible now, you realize a number of those things were not even in the older texts of the Bible. And I honestly believe that if God or Jesus Christ were to be reincarnated right now, today, at this very second, they would be ashamed of a number of the Christians that practice the religion based on the word of God. Why? Because in the words of God and Jesus Christ, God loves all people. There is a lyric. Any There is a lyric in the song "Same Love" by Macklemore, Ryan Lewis, and Mary Lambert. There is a there is a there's two lyrics in the before the first chorus. The first verse in that song, the very end of it says, "God loves all his children is somehow forgotten, yet we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago." Think about that for a second. How can people practice the words of God who says to love thy neighbor, to love all people, and yet there are a number of Christians out there that hate certain people because of these certain characteristics of that person, especially characteristics that they had no control over? That's something you have to really think about in the context of this whole situation, because in my book, that's kind of part of the context. Because how can you say you love all people and yet you don't support every community of people? How can you say you love all people if you don't respect all people? You can tolerate all people, yeah, and in my honest opinion, Ballomatic doesn't support the LGBTQ plus community, but he tolerates them. He tolerates members in that community because he is in communities, and I know this for a fact. He is in communities that do not allow any kind of hate toward any group of people. He knows that if he were to go there with anybody, he would be kicked out of that community because of that. And he knows it. That's why he's very selective on what he says and how he says it. Because we cannot control what Ballomatic says or does in regard to his own community, but we can control what Ballomatic says or does in our own communities. And if he doesn't like it, well, this is going to sting, but I gotta say it. Suck it up, Buttercup. Seriously, if you cannot handle being called out or otherwise be kicked out of the community because of kicked out of a community and banned because of what you said or done, that is your problem, not the problem of the person who is in charge of that community. Somebody out there, vehicle out there going on there. Um, Now as far as now I'll probably think about Ballomatic a little bit here, but a little bit more here, but right now I wanted to switch gears a little bit. I'm not going to talk about Purple Phoenix in this situation because while technically she hasn't said anything publicly, that doesn't exactly mean that she didn't say anything privately to Ballomatic about the situation. Now you could say, well, just the fact that she's not talking about it publicly says all you need to know. That's technically not true because we don't know what happens behind closed doors unless one party decides to talk about it. Until they do, we don't know what's going on if anything is going on behind closed doors. And so I'm not going to talk about Purple Phoenix because technically she hasn't said anything publicly, but we don't know about if she's done anything privately. So I'm not going to talk about her. I'm not going to talk about her. I won't talk about Grande because he didn't make a video. And I also want to bring up something that involved him from the other side later. But with Grande, he did make a video about the situation. In my honest opinion, it's a mixed bag. He did make a few good, like one or two good points, but the problem is, when I rewatched the video, I realized, yeah, he was vague about certain things. Like, he was vague about certain things, and he was repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And as has been taught to me by outside sources, if you repeat something so many times over, people will be bound to believe it, no matter, regardless, keyword, regardless if it is true or not. Even if it's true, good. If it's not, they don't care. Now, there is something that involves Purple Phoenix a little bit, and I don't know if it's the case. I've heard about it. I don't know if it's true or not from her, but there's photographic evidence to support it on Grande's side, so I will again criticize on this one. The fact that there were comments that were being deleted on Grande's video, yeah, that's an issue. If you can't handle an ounce of criticism from anybody, maybe the best thing for you to have done is not make a video about it at all. Now, some people are going to think, well, what if you do the same thing? Hey, you'd call me a hypocrite. If I ever were to ask, if I were to ever do that, in regard to people who are respectfully talking about what I've said, instead of the disrespectful people, because usually I only take out the clearly disrespectful people's comments for obvious reasons, because in my community I want respectful comments and posts and all that. I don't want to see an ounce of disrespect toward anybody. Not myself, not toward anybody else commenting on the video, none of that. Because I do believe we could actually have a good conversation, a serious but respectful conversation about whatever. In any way, shape, or form. Hold up, let me check something here. Alright. Uh, I just I just noticed something. So that's why I was looking. That's why if my screen went off a little bit, that's what I was doing. I was looking at something that caught my attention. Um, that happened to be on my phone, which is how I'm recording this video in the first place. Yeah, the way I see it, like I said, if you can't take an ounce of criticism, best thing to do is to not say anything about it at all. Not to say anything about a controversial topic at all. Especially if you know it's going to be controversial. Like, even people will say, well, I agree with this, but here's how you could have worded it better, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Like, that's respectful. That is respectful. But if you were going to just name call a person because, how dare you speak out on this situation, regardless of what side of the coin you're on, but just basically call you every name under the sun, that's disrespectful. I'd take those comments down to heartbeat because to me that's not helping matters at all. At all. Mm-mm. Yeah, but with Purple Phoenix, I've heard that was going on, but I haven't seen any evidence to support that. So that's why I'm not going to talk about it on her side of the coin with that being the case. So we're just going to leave that alone as far as she is concerned. But like I said, because she's not talking about it publicly, that doesn't mean she didn't do anything behind closed doors, as in like in DMs. We don't know that just because she didn't say anything. I think we can all kind of go along with that. She didn't say nothing doesn't mean she didn't do anything. Grande said things that has since caused him to decide to leave YouTube. And there's a reason why. One of the reasons why is one of the things I'm gonna get into for the next one. Hey, Cam Dog, how you doing tonight? But let's talk about Nicholas Fernaro's video. I did watch that video, and I thought it was very. I thought it was a very interesting video. It made me rethink. It made me think about some of the things that I've heard, and and I've even commented on Nicholas's video. Let me look it up real quick, and I'll tell you what I said on his video. Um,
Nope. In fact,
yeah, you just heard Grande, but that was actually Nicholas's video. Here's what I said. Let me find my comment because I know it's. Yeah, here it is. I said on this post, on this video, I know I have stated some opinions on what Ballomatic has said on two videos about Ballomatic's comments. They were the the very first video that started this whole thing, and there was one other video. I can't think of it at the top of my head, but there was a second video. Um, but here's what I haven't said. I don't agree with Ballomatic at all. I have been a supporter of the LGBTQ plus community since I met someone in the community in the second half of my high school years. I agree that Ballomatic doesn't like the community because of his religious beliefs, which, ironically, I think the God he preaches to would be ashamed of people like him, as the Bible has become a book of hate more than love. In parenthesis on that bit. Um, but he tolerates them to a degree, not entirely, as he is in communities that he knows will not tolerate hate toward anyone, and doing so will have consequences. My community is one of them, even though he hasn't been there for some time, and that's true. It's been months since I last seen him in one of my live stream chats. And I would find it very ironically funny if he actually did show up here as I said that. I don't intend to pick sides. I just chose to state my opinion on this that I don't think I've said elsewhere, because you and everyone who has stated their respective opinions at this point, or will, have that right. As always, I respect you for letting it be known to not spread hate toward others because that gets everybody nowhere. That is all I said on Nicholas's video. I was a part of the situation because I was almost friends with him for 3 years. Yeah, I get it. I'm more of a mutual through him, but I've interacted with him before in the past, both on my end and somewhat, and not as much on his, but more on my end because he has been on my live streams. Not on my live streams, but in my stream chat a few times. And so, but yeah, that's what I said. That's pretty much all I said on that. As far as he goes, with Grande, like I said, there's something that happened to him that caused him to leave YouTube after, besides him getting criticized more often than not for what he said. Because Grande was vague, you're repeating so many different things, and he only made one or two good points in his video. And I even watched Nintendo Novice's live stream talking about the situation as well. That was after Nicholas's video, by the way. Um, so yeah, there's that. Um, but I want to talk about the other side a little bit here because I don't currently have anything to talk about on the side of Ballomatic, Purple Phoenix, and Grande. This is where some people will say, "Oh, he's gonna be middlemaning." Yes, I am because, like I said earlier, both sides have done things that I'm not too particularly proud of seeing be done. Let me see if we've got something here. Okay, so I don't really see anything of this, but there was at least one of these that I've seen, and I have talked to the person myself, and I let them know how I personally felt about it, but I still wanted to talk about it. I'm not going to reveal the person's name because they have since uh, privated the video, so they they realized they messed up, and I give them credit, all the credit for that, and that's why I'm not going to bring up their name. They know who they are, they really do, but I'm not going to say his name because he deleted the video, and has since taken it down, but I still think it needs to be discussed. Uh, so the small thing that I was not really happy about was that there was one cover of, there was one AI cover of Grande singing the song My Way. If you don't know the song, to give you, uh, if you don't know the song, let me, find an actual cover of this song and you'll see what I'm saying. Now, when I say My Way, I'm not talking about, like, Limp Bizkit's My Way. I'm talking, like, first off, that's not what I was looking for. That's Attack on Titans, not what I was talking about. Uh, yeah, it's this one. Clear my face, the final curtain. It's that song. Someone did that under Grande, and like I said, I let it be known how I felt about it, and I told him straight up, if you want to criticize any one of the three of them, that's fine, but this could be considered harassment. And he had, like I said, he has since taken down the video. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that is done and pretty much buried. But I still wanted to talk about it because it still happened. and I'm not too happy with that. And I was hearing from someone that allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but allegedly, people were doing AI covers of songs using Ballomatic's voice. Again, I don't know if that's true or not because I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I'm only talking about what I do know. Because it makes sense to talk about what you do know and not what you don't know. Because if you talk about what you don't know, and it turns out you were wrong in any way, shape, or form, that's going to make you look bad. And I'm not here to talk about things that I don't know because that would make me look bad, and that's not what I want to do. Literally at the time, all I did was unmod him just in case if something were to happen, but until one of all his mods cutting ties with me at 1 a.m. trying because it hurt me. Yeah, I can understand why because you've known. Yeah, I can understand why. But you know what's worse? Now, I don't mean to do this as a bit of like a throwaway thing, but yeah, I can understand why that would hurt because, yeah, because that doesn't make any, like, why would Neutral at the time, all I did was unmod him. See, unmodded him, you know, it's a public relations kind of thing. It's kind of like, good in comparison, kind of like with Johnny Depp, when what happened with him and Amber Heard. At first, with Johnny Depp, people wanted to cut ties with him because, you know, to protect themselves from any potential backlash. That's how it is. Public relations type of thing. And then, yeah, yeah, like I said, public relations. But then, so basically, he cut you off because you unmodded him in case something bad could have happened, something worse could have happened. That's See, if someone were to unmod me, because I am a mod in a couple of communities, because of controversy surrounding me, I would understand it because you know you're innocent less proven guilty, and if you're guilty in the end, they ultimately did the right call, right? See, in my book, that's not really a mistake. It's more like protection. Send you a DM of what he said. All right, okay. That is. I don't know if I got it set on my Discord where people can send me DMs without having to send me a friend request. But yeah, go ahead. But yeah, sure, go ahead. Oh, it's right there. Okay, no, I didn't. All right, let me check this out. Hmm. Hmm. Ah, okay, okay. Unless you allow me to talk about it, I'm not going to, Cam. Out of respect for you, I'm not going to talk about it. Like what was said and how I feel about what was said. Because, again, I want to respect your privacy, and so, best way, yeah, I don't want to talk about things if I don't have permission talking about it. Hmm. Hmm. Because there is one thing that I would talk about it, but like I said, I want to get your permission to speak on it a little bit before I say anything. It's fine. It's been revealed on the one of the. All right. Okay. Well, I didn't know because I haven't watched every single video talking about the situation. But yeah, to say, I'm gonna. Yeah, I just want to say, how can you take someone calling a community, a group of people that their religion says you're supposed to love all people, and yet say uh, it's far out of context? How can you say a person practicing a religion that's supposed to that has the message where God loves everybody, and yet says that people in a certain community are broken and need help? how is that out of context? Like, if he legitimately said, word for word, that the community is broken and they need help, that's not taking it out of context. That sentence is literally a controversy waiting to happen. If somebody were to look at that in full detail, were to look at that, which it happened to be a controversy going on here, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Because the whole point of everybody going off on this isn't about his beliefs. Like, if he doesn't support that community, he doesn't support that community. End of story. But he added extra lingo to it that caused him to be in the hot seat in the first place. If he would have just simply said, and I've said this earlier in the stream, but I'm saying it for the people that are just joining in, that haven't seen that bit. If he would have just simply, if the conversation would have simply have been, um, do you support the LGBTQ plus community, Ballomatic? No, I don't. Why not? Because of my personal religious beliefs. He didn't have to add the extra lingo of they're broken and they need help. If he would have just left it at I just don't it goes against my personal religious beliefs, it may be deemed controversial still, but nowhere near as bad as it is now because of what he said. This isn't about taking things out of context. This is about the fact that a man literally said things about a community where members of that, and even worse, intentionally uh, misgendered somebody, knowing full well that that their preferred pronouns were she her instead of he him. If I were to do the same thing to Ballomatic, he wouldn't like it. I know he wouldn't. Hey, hey, what's the matter? Hmm. I have my own police because I have a grandmother who's religious and I have a cousin who's trans because books we all love each other the way who they are. You know, I actually when I was a kid, some people this will actually be the first time I actually did say this. When I was a kid, I had I had neighbors who were religious, and they used to go to this church that's not too far away from where I live. Before they moved out of state, um, and I've gone to their church a few times, and and they were telling me that God loves all His people. And at the time, I decided to invoke that in my personal, like, in my in how I treat other people. Do I love all people? Yes. Do I respect all people? No. But I do care about them enough to know that there are four things. Well, technically, multitude of things, but there are there are four things in particular that I would not do to another person. I would not wish death or harm on them. I would not wish them to be swatted. I wouldn't even swat them in the first place. And the fourth thing is the one thing that I'm talking about for the other side of the coin that I'm very much not happy about because one person did do this to one of the three people involved. I would not wish for anybody nor dox anybody. Yeah, one of the three people, Grande, was doxxed uh, in a video. And now they didn't reveal his address, but they revealed his location. Now I don't. Now you could say whatever the hell you want to say about this situation. I don't care whether you're for Ballomatic or against him. You can say what you want, but I will be damned But pretty much, you literally just threw all of your viewpoints out of the fucking window the second you decide to dox somebody. Because in my book, if you dox anybody, your opinion from what you said in the video means nothing to me. I know who did it too. Because I seen his video. I know who did it. Do I stoop to his level and reveal his name? Or do I, you know, that's the thing. Sometimes you may choose to stoop to the level of a person, other times you don't. I chose not to stoop to the level of, you know, I chose not to stoop to the level of, what I just said. I don't wish harm, I don't wish death, I don't swat, nor do I dox anybody. Anybody that I don't personally care for or respect, but I do care about them. Well, I know what I said. But yeah. See, that's the thing. Those are the only two things that I didn't like that I've seen from the other side of the coin. That, making AI covers of using covers of songs, using AI voices of a person, which was like the small thing, and then doxing another person, which is huge. Especially when you consider the fact that, depending on where you live, doxing somebody is actually illegal. So because I know who the person is, but I don't know where they live, I if I really, really wanted to, I could call somebody on them to if I really was that type of person, I really could do that. But in my book, he has also since privated the video. At the same time, he has privated the video. I don't know if he redid the video without the doxing. I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't care to know because the moment you dox somebody is the moment you lose respect. Even the small sliver of respect that you've already gotten from me at that point in time. If you dox somebody, I don't really care that of what you have to say because to me, doxing is the worst thing you could do. It really is. Now, like I said, I'm not really going to talk much about Purple Phoenix because we she hasn't said anything publicly. The only thing I've heard about her, outside of her not publicly going off on Ballomatic, because we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, she may have called out called out Ballomatic in private. We don't know because she's not saying anything, and she's likely not going to say anything because in a way, we've seen what happened with Grande. She probably watched that video and thought, well, if that happened to him, it could happen to me, and so I don't want to say anything about it. That's probably what's going on, as far as her. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about what I don't know, because if I don't know what's going on, and it turns out, and if I try to say what I think is what I, you know, what I believe is going on, and it turns out I'm 100% wrong, that's going to make me look bad. As I said earlier. So as far as I'm concerned, Purple Phoenix is literally the one on the furthest back burner you could possibly go. Grande kind of got himself in this situation by talking about it. I know people that are talking about it are getting involved in the situation in even the smallest degree. I get it. Um, but the fact of the matter is, the way I see this, the way I see it, both sides, in even the smallest degree, messed up because Ballomatic has decided to act like he's the victim by even going so far as on his one post where he talked about deleting his Discord server and then he is going to be creating a new one at some point down the line, and he has even turned the comments off on that post. That was just a few short days after people started talking about the situation. So, and as I said, I have a question for Ballomatic on this one. Just on that one alone, why would you delete your old Discord server to try to create a new one when you could, if you wanted to, he really could have just kicked people out of his community, like out of his Discord server. And but on top of but he's making a new Discord server. Fine, whatever. But why would he delete his old Discord server to create a new one, as well as turning off the comments on that post? I'm pretty certain I won't say I know why, but I'm pretty sure I have a two explanations. I know he would say to stop the harassment because he knows people are because I know people are going to harass me and I don't want that to happen. But I really think it's also really because of the fact that he knew, harassment or no harassment, people were going to go on that post and they were going to continue to criticize him on what he said. He knew that. At least that much. He knew it. He could spin it as to people were going to harass him. But he knew people were going to be talking about that specifically, regardless if they were for him or against him. Primarily, those who were against him were going to probably comment on those posts, on that post, and he knew that. That's why he turned it off. But he would label it as them harassing him. I know this because usually people who play the victim usually like to pull excuses out of their bum. As I said before, if you're not afraid, if you cannot handle people criticizing your comments in even the smallest degree, and you are not willing to even try to you know even like even apologize. Like you can still believe what you want to believe, but at least admit you could have just left it at I don't support that community because of my own personal religious beliefs. He just could have left it. He could have at least admit you could have left it at that, and with an apology. You see what I'm saying? As I was saying before earlier, you have that song that I was talking about, "Save Love" by Macklemore, Ryan Lewis, and Mary Lambert. And there's that phrase that I think about every time I think about this situation. It just Ballomatic's religion as a whole. There's one line there that says, "God loves all his God loves all his people is somehow forgotten. Yet we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago." Which is also ironic because when you look at the Bible, I have two copies of the Bible. I have this one that's over here, and I have one that's right here in front of me. They are years apart, and I would not be surprised if both of them have even the slightest difference between how they were written in those books. I would not be surprised because when you look, and I know we're gonna get into religion a little bit here, but here's the reason why I talk about this. There have been these TikTok videos that I remember watching where people would try to quote the Bible using, they would even give off the verse at where this quote came from, and a person would take multiple Bibles. They would read the quote, they would read the verse that was provided to them in the comment, and one, maybe two of those books will have the same, if not similar wording. But then they will have a third book that will be completely different from the other two verses, and they would use that as a means to prove a point. Basically, the point in my book is that they they revise the Bible to mean what they want it to mean, not what God or Jesus Christ would want it to mean, or even the very first book of the Bible, the very first version of the Bible that was published. They wouldn't want to look at it with what that means. They only want to look at it with how they view it. And there's actually a guy that my dad actually referred to me. That has a community where if anybody wants to uh, see what I'm referring to, I have no problem showing it to anybody. But I think he actually this man had has a very good way of talking about of what he's saying, and he complete and you know I'm actually thinking about watching his videos myself after this, because my dad shared me a clip of of one of his videos on Facebook, and I think this is somebody Ballomatic should watch. I am being honest. I'm not joking. I'm being completely drop dead honest. If Ballomatic hasn't seen this person, he should. I'd have to look up his name, but yeah. If Ballomatic himself wants to see it as well, I will show it to anybody who wants to see it. Ballomatic, uh, and anybody here that was watching this, even in the VOD, I will share it to anybody that wishes to see it for themselves. Anybody. But at the end of the day, Ballomatic messed up very badly. Grande messed up in his own way. I think he was trying to do what he felt was right, but it still ended up backfiring on him pretty badly, to the point to where he and Karen both, well, he and Gothrock Fairy, I should say, because I usually prefer to use usernames more than real names. But yeah, those two have left YouTube, and as far as I'm concerned with those two, I wish them the best in their future. I honest to God truth do. Even even in the wake of this situation, I still wish them both the best because I care about them. I care about them that much. Even with the fact that people can mess up at times, depending on how bad the mess up is, yeah, I could still be friends with that person. I could let them know, hey, you messed up big time when you did this, and yet still be friends with them. As I've said before, you could be friend, as I said near the very beginning, you could be friends with somebody, and yet still, and yet you can still call them out on their bullshit. True statement right there. That's what I've always said to everybody. I've always said if people ever have a problem or a question or a comment with a, and they want to share it with me about me or what I've said or what I've done, I welcome it. I always have and I always will, because I want to improve myself. I know I'm not perfect, and I'm never going to be perfect. Nobody is going to be perfect, but they're going to at least try to be as good a person as they can possibly be in their own way. That's why I've said if people want to have a conversation with me about what I've said, or they have a question or concern about what I've said or what I've done, by all means, do so. I would love for people to do that. Even if it revolved around this VOD. If somebody were to come up to me and say, well, why did you talk about this? I would say, well, in some way, I've known Ballomatic more mutually than compared to a number of other people that have talked about the situation. But I've known him a little bit, and I felt justified in what I said. Also, there were things that were happening on both sides of the coin that I felt that should be discussed. Even if people on the side that I mentioned, where you had somebody that made AI cover, where you had at least one person make AI covers of one of the three people singing songs and especially doxing them, I'm going to talk about it. I actually wanted to see how things were going to be before I ultimately decided to talk about it. Basically, when things kind of died down a little bit, that's when I would talk about it. That's when I decided to talk about it. Because then I could talk about how I felt about both sides of the coin without sounding like I am for one or the other. As I've said on there, I'm not picking sides. I'm not going to be picking sides. I'm going to state my full on opinion. I don't agree with Ballomatic. That doesn't mean I'm automatically siding with the people that are against him. But I'm not. But I'm also calling some of the actions that not everybody in that side of the coin did. So I'm not siding with Ballomatic at all. Do you see where I'm going? You see where I'm getting with this? This is about as middleman as you can be, because I know that not every that both sides messed up in some way, and I felt the need to talk about it. As far as I'm concerned, um, people are some people are owning up to their mistakes, and other people aren't. And I can only say what I believe, and just leave it at that. And whatever happens after this, on either side of the coin, whatever happens, and if people were to kick me out of their communities because of me voicing my opinion, so be it. It's a risk I have to. It's a risk I'm willing to take. Because I know that they're gonna. Because I wouldn't be surprised if either Ballomatic or Purple Phoenix, primarily Ballomatic, were to come to me and ask me why I made the video, and I'm gonna respond how I said, exactly as I said. That's what I'd say to them if either one of them were to ask me about it. But at the end of the day, what happened, happened, and what happens from here on out, happens. I decided to state my opinion at a time when it's on a bit of a down low, so that way we could have a conversation about it. Hopefully, people are more respectful than disrespectful to each other. That's what I'm being that open. I want people on both sides to comment on this video. I want them to talk about it. Because I feel like we all should talk about it. You don't have to agree, but at least talk about it. As I said before, when you spread hate toward people, it gets everybody nowhere. I'm not I'm not sending hate. I'm not I'm not gonna allow people to throw hate toward Ballomatic or Purple Phoenix, or if they were to meet him in real life, Grande, because no, because that is not right. And I know there are going to be some fans that are going to be that are going to be randomly seeing this video, and they're going to attack somebody, even though I said not to. That's where, that's just how I see it. If people want to talk about this, they don't have to agree. I just ask that everybody that's going to be commenting on this to be respectful to be respectful. Any type of disrespect, and I mean disrespect, will not be tolerated. That is my fair warning to anybody that's going to comment on the video down below. I've said my piece. I've talked about how I feel about the situation on both in regard to both sides of the coin. And so at the end, and whatever happens after this goes up, happens. So with that said, that is my viewpoint. I don't know if I did this as good as I probably think I did, which I'm not gonna talk about because that's bragging, and I'm not here to brag on a serious conversation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, how people view this is how they view it. And like I said, I hope people at least have the common decency to be respectful if they were to comment in the, and if they were to go down the comment section and talk about what I've said, and people were to respond to those comments about those that comment on what I said. Either way, I felt like I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from with all of what I've said, even though I've repeated myself maybe possibly two, maybe three times at most, a few times with certain things, which basically means if that's the case, I can't uh, technically go off on Run Day 4 because then that it's hypocritical. That would be hypocritical of me now to do that. So it's funny because sometimes hypocrisy makes people laugh at the hypocrisy of what somebody says. But yeah. With that said, that is all I'm gonna say about the situation. If things come up, I'll probably put a comment on the video as an edit kind of thing, or like an aftermath thing or whatever, and talk about it in the comments section. Either way, I've said what I felt like needs to be said, even if people will not, even though I know people will not entirely agree with what I've said. It is what it is. And with that, uh, to everybody who has watched this video, I wish you a good rest of your day, evening, night, or whatever time of day you're watching this. I hope you have a good day. And until next time, this is Forrest Walpole, signing off.